My name is Kane Robinson. I'm the Executive Director of General Operations at the National Rifle Association. And I used to be the Iowa Republican State Chairman. As a part of that process over many years, I got to know Congressman Steve King, and am privileged to call him a friend. Steve King is a very serious guy, and you're going to have a treat. And an accomplishment that opponents have come to appreciate and regret, he built his successful construction business starting with a bulldozer. Serving in the Iowa State Senate for 6 years, he was the key to successfully eliminating the Iowa inheritance tax. He sponsored the law that made English the official language. He specialized in purging government regulations that impede the growth of business and jobs. King won a lawsuit against the Democrat governor when that governor attempted to exceed the power of his office. Steve King has made a career of defeating powerful potentates. Elected to Congress in 2002 after whipping the Speaker of the House and a wealthy senator from the biggest city in the district. Both of his well-known primary opponents had very elaborate help from the official Republican committees in Washington. Congressman King is a recognized national leader on stopping and then repealing Obamacare. He's a recognized leader on stopping illegal immigration and securing our borders. Congressman Steve King.
This is great. You know, I hadn't relived some of those parts of my life that Kane relived for you. And we're not people that rest on our laurels. We don't look back much except to learn some lessons on how we go forward. And I'd like to think that that is our creed here at CPAC and among the conservatives in this country. And certainly I'm convinced it's Kane Robinson's creed and that of many of you that I've had the privilege to work with and serve with throughout the years. I want to address a series of subjects here today and put them under the umbrella of constitutional conservatism. It is, you know, as we started this thing, and all of us, and we were under this umbrella, look back at the cap and tax bill that emerged, and we had a lot of town hall meetings in that summer. I think it was of the summer of 2009 on cap and tax. And my town hall meetings filled up, and I showed them a big pie chart of the energy we produce and the energy we consume and where it comes from. And instead, they were telling us that if you plant a corn stalk in Iowa, somebody will take out a tree in Brazil. And I'm supposed to argue with that? And that's where this began, though. We understood that we can't disadvantage America. We need all energy all the time, and we need it as cheap as we can get it, as competitive as it can be, because we'll be competitive with every other country in America if we have it. And that's kind of the foundation. And I only take you there, not because it's the most energized issue today, although gas is over $3, but it's because that was the beginning of this movement in America. This movement that brought about the Tea Parties, that brought about the 9/12 Project groups, that brought the constitutional conservatives to the streets of America. And we saw it reach an intensity in the summer of 2010. With the health care bill that filled up our town hall meetings and packed them full. And I remember the intensity that was there. And I was going to be in that room whether I was a member of Congress holding a town hall meeting or whether I was somebody standing in there because I wanted to demand that Congress keep their hands off of, you think I'm going to say health care, keep their hands off of our liberty. This is what I saw, and we saw tens of thousands of people come here to this capital city to demand that Congress keep their hands off of our health care and our liberty. And I saw this on November 7th, when the House, under Nancy Pelosi's iron fist, rammed through the health care bill. That was a year ago last November 7th, so that puts us into the summer actually of 2009. I got my year off a moment ago. I remember that date, and I remember standing there and doing battle. And I will tell you that if the House of Representatives, the Republicans, the 178 of us that existed then, had all pulled out all the stops and burned all the energy we could, we'd have killed Obamacare then. We could have done it, but we didn't get it done. And what came about was a new majority November 2nd of last year. Now I see 87 new Republican freshmen, and they are, and I've told them this and looked them straight in the eye, and I mean it. I meant it the day I first said it, and I mean it today. The 87 new freshmen are God's gift to America. And this gift that he sent to us can't be squandered. We have a responsibility to work with them, help inspire them. This is the cavalry that came over the hill. And I voted no on the tax extension that extends the Bush tax cuts for 2 years, because I think we forgot we won the majority. That was a proposal that would have worked with Republicans in the minority. But we could have made the Bush tax cuts permanent, and we could have ended the death tax forever if we'd have held the line and put that bill on Harry Reid's lap in the first week of the new Congress with the new majority, with the 87 new Republicans. We could have done it. Well, I had some other good news last fall. I got a call that said that my daughter-in-law was going into labor, and so I headed to the hospital. And I wanted to get there as quickly as I could. My BlackBerry went off about 20 minutes out of town, and I opened it up, and it said, "Congratulations, you have a new granddaughter. Her name is Reagan Ann King." And it was a little hard to see to drive there for a while, but it means a powerful thing to me. It ties together the generations, and it leaves a bigger responsibility yet for her and her generation, and her cousins, by the way. We're blessed with other grandchildren too. And just having come back from Simi Valley, and Ronald Reagan's, the Reagan Library, and the things that we did out there to commemorate the 100th birthday of Ronald Reagan. And having had the privilege of going up to the ranch in that long, windy 40-minute drive, and some of you have been there, to see the things that Ronald Reagan built with his own hands, to get a sense of the man who was a full-spectrum conservative, who left a legacy that today we are still impacted by the image and the ideals of Ronald Reagan 100 years after his birth and these years after his death. And I think that having a granddaughter named Reagan Ann King ties us all into those principles of Ronald Reagan. And if you think that that might have been maybe a not very well thought out decision on the part of her parents, I will tell you that this little girl is only about an hour and a half old, and her mother Lindsay is holding her in the hospital bed, and little Reagan Ann King, and she said to me, "This girl has no chance to grow up to be a liberal." And I want to talk to you about a few pieces of subject matter. One you'll expect me to talk about, and that's immigration, and I need to, because things have changed. And we went through 4 years of Nancy Pelosi's speakership, and I stood there sometimes alone fighting off the amnesty initiatives that they had. And a lot of it didn't make the news. As a ranking member of the Immigration Subcommittee, it fell to me to do battle. One day they brought legislation, 2 pieces. One of them would have given amnesty and legalized 557,000 people. We found out that it was coming before the committee at 11 o'clock that night. My great staff went to work, produced, with a little bit of guidance, but they had a lot of good ideas, a grocery cart full of amendments. And I mean, it was a wire cart, square bottom, but a lot like a grocery cart. No exaggeration is my point. And when they took up that committee meeting the next day, a couple of my committee members brought their amendments, and after an hour and a half or so, they were gone to do other things. And I'm still offering amendments. I'd offer an amendment, they would challenge the germaneness of it. Well, it was out of order, so I'd lose that debate. Then I'd bring one that was germane. And I alternated that. And, they argued with me. That's what I wanted them to do. And after a while, they were arguing with each other. And by 9:30 that night, they had exhausted themselves, and they didn't have a quorum, so I let the bill go to final passage, and it failed. I don't have to do that anymore. I don't have to do that anymore because you have sent this new God's gift to America class of 87 Republicans for the 112th Congress, and now we sit in the majority. And now we can bring an initiative. And I'm hearing the press ask me, well, now that a couple of Republicans, or maybe even one of them, senators, have started to talk about a comprehensive immigration reform, what can be passed on that in the House? Well, you all know that when anybody says comprehensive immigration reform, that means what? Amnesty. And anybody that brings up amnesty in this Congress, we need to take the scarlet letter A and just pin it on them, the A for amnesty. And it'll be a lot easier to kill amnesty with this majority than it was with Nancy Pelosi as the Speaker. So I'm here to tell you that I don't think anything comes through this Congress that grants amnesty. Now, there's some things we can do. And a number of them we're dealing with actually today, hearing on E-Verify. But I just came back from a trip down to the border. And I went from El Paso across to New Mexico, all the way along the border in a lot of Arizona, at least to Nogales, and then on over on the border ways and up to Tucson. I don't know how many trips I've made down there. I can see there's a difference. I won't stand here and tell you that they're not doing anything. We've doubled the size of the Border Patrol. They ought to be doing something, and many of them are. We haven't spent all of our money in the best way. So here are the solutions that I'll just propose that we need to continue to work on. We need to build a fence, a wall, and a fence on the border. Not just act like it, build it. They built one in El Paso, and it's a fence and a fence, and inside that fence, if you go look, is a canal. The water diverted from the Rio Grande. And so now people climb over the first fence, and now they have to swim. And if they can swim across the canal, they don't climb the next fence quite as fast because they got all of that water that weighs them down. Soaking wet, they always say, what do I weigh soaking wet? I'm more than I did when I was dry. It's harder to climb when you're heavy. So the efficiency in El Paso has been improved substantially. The traffic's gone west towards New Mexico. There's still a fair amount of traffic in Arizona. They've done better. But we can do a lot better. We can, if we build a fence, a wall, and a fence, and we put the technology there, the virtual that actually works, not the virtual that just happens to satisfy some lobbyists, we can shut off all illegal traffic crossing those borders on the southern border. We can do it. And then we need to beef up our ports of entry because that's where the smuggling will be. But you need to know, 90% of the illegal drugs in America come from or through Mexico. It's about a $40 billion a year business, and about $60 billion a year goes back south into either Mexico or the Caribbean, Central America. That's the transfer of our economy. That's what's happening. We've got to shut it off. We've got to shut it off. And then I've introduced legislation in previous Congresses, and it will soon be rolling out in this one, called the New Idea Act. I mean, anybody been audited by the IRS? And do they seem to be willing to enforce the laws they have to work with? That's my experience. So I looked around through the agencies and thought, Janet Napolitano doesn't seem to be very willing to enforce. And that seems to be true of other agencies. So passing another law doesn't get the job done. We should go get the people that are actively enforcing the laws they have and put them to work to help us with immigration. So I drafted in legislation that puts an end to the business expense of paying wages to illegals. So when the IRS does an audit, they'll give you safe harbor if you use E-Verify, but otherwise the money paid for wages to illegals is denied as a business expense. It goes over to the profit column where it turns your $10 an hour illegal into a $16 an hour illegal, and we end up with the New Idea Act, the New Illegal Deduction Elimination Act, and I think we can pass it this year. And before I leave the subject of immigration, I just told myself I would tell you this because I think it's a good way to think about what's going on. The liberals want open borders. They've been pushing for open borders for a long time. They're undermining the rule of law. They're undermining constitutional conservatism, both the full spectrum. They're undermining the fiscal responsibility with these trillions in debt. They're undermining our social aspects by undermining marriage and taking away personal responsibility and expanding the dependency class. They put the Constitution under assault, and they clearly did so by passing Obamacare. That's what liberals are doing to America. And people think, I'm worried about migrants. Well, I am, because they're lawbreakers. In fact, most of them are criminals. But if we get down to this scarlet letter amnesty thing, and if push really comes to shove, and they're going to pass some kind of amnesty over the top of us, then I'll say, here's my deal. Let's go ahead and have an exchange program. If liberals are serious, if they want to bring in somebody illegally or grant them amnesty, fine, we'll keep them. Let's deport the liberals instead. We can build a greater country if we just make that exchange. We can convert those other folks into conservatives because they understand the value of hard work and hopefully the rule of law. Now, I have to also tell you about where I stand with the IRS because I brought them up. In about 1980, I decided I want rid of the IRS. I want to abolish the Internal Revenue Service and the Federal Income Tax Code completely, get rid of it all. And here's the principle, and I'll be doing a panel later on in the conference on this, but here's the principle. Ronald Reagan's principle. He said, what you tax, you get less of. All right? Because tax is a punishment, so people don't want to submit to more punishment, and so they stop doing whatever it is that you tax. And he also said, well, you subsidize, you get more of. Well, you tax, you get less of. Well, think of this. The federal government has the first lien on all productivity in America. If you punch the time clock, if you invest, if you save, if you're going to cash in on dividends or capital gains, Uncle Sam is there with his hand out till he gets his. All productivity in America is punished by taxes. If we go to the fair tax, we take the tax off of all production in America. We stop punishing production in America. We put it on consumption, and we let you earn all you can earn, save all you want to save, invest all you want to, create every job you want to, build a company, build a factory, be an entrepreneur, and go out on the internet and make all you can make. So, in conclusion, I want to reflect back on Ronald Reagan. And we, standing there at the Reagan Library last week, and then on up at the ranch up on the mountain, I was very well aware we stood in Ronald Reagan's shadow. We also stand on his shoulders. And he asked us to build a shining city on the hill. And at his gravesite, it's inscribed in the stone. As I stood there and contemplated it, there were so many thoughts wrapped up in it, I couldn't commit it all to memory, and I wrote it down. But this is a statement at Ronald Reagan's grave, inscribed in the stone there in Simi Valley. He said, I know in my heart that man is good, that what is right will always eventually triumph, and there is purpose and worth to each and every life. But we have a purpose and worth, and we have a mission ahead of us, and we don't know whether we win this in our time or not, but it's really going to be in God's time. It'll be His victory, not our victory, but it's our obligation to serve and do all we can with the gifts He has given us. God's gift to America needs to be used to preserve these constitutional principles. You're here to help preserve them. I'm energized by your presence. I pledge to do my duty. God bless you. I know you'll do yours.